There's so much information available on the internet that sometimes it can be hard for people to interpret everything that they get. I'm a firm believer in spending all the time that's necessary in order for patients and their families to fully understand what's going on to make a good decision.
Good afternoon. I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. Here's some news that's not so great for women. Donald Trump this week announced 9 more nominations to federal judgeships. Every single one of the 9 was white. 7 of them are men. That makes 80 of 87 federal judicial appointments by Donald Trump have been white people. Only about 14 of them have been women. He's making the judiciary white again as he makes America great again. Perhaps it's hard to find conservative judges who are black, brown, or women to fill the ideological roles he wants filled on the judgeship. One's coming up in Arkansas soon. Out at the legislature, Governor Asa Hutchinson's run into a problem. Senator Ron Caldwell of Wynne says he'll hold up the whole budget process if the governor doesn't do something about the pharmacist complaints about poor reimbursements under the Medicaid expansion program for drugs supplied to people who are covered by that insurance. Can Caldwell make that stick? I don't know. The governor would rather put this off. Caldwell wants a commitment that the governor at least will address this issue in the special session. That's likely when the Medicaid debate will finally be settled because the Senate is 3 senators short currently with special elections slated to fill those seats, and until they're filled, they may not have the 3/4 votes to pass this program. Also at the legislature, the National Rifle Association is lying again, not unusual for the gun lobby. They say that there's a pending piece of legislation that would roll back the legislation that allowed people to take concealed guns onto college campuses with the right sort of permit. That's simply not true. It is a lie. They know it's a lie. What the resolution would do is clear up something in the drafting of that bill and make happen what was supposed to happen in the first place, and that is that guns would not be allowed in dormitory rooms on college campuses in the state. That's hotly controversial with the NRA. They want guns everywhere. Youth Services is in the news. Lindsay Miller of the Arkansas Times has written an article for the Arkansas Nonprofit News Network that will be in the Times later this week, and it's about abysmal conditions in youth lockups, particularly down at Dermot. People aren't even provided soap. They lack coats in cold weather. Sometimes the heat doesn't work. Sometimes the air conditioning doesn't work. This is how the state treats children. The state acknowledges some problems, says it's going to do better, says they hope eventually to turn this over to a private operator. Well, the Plant Board had approved a program to try the planting and harvesting of industrial hemp in Arkansas. That's now been held up because of questions from the governor's office and the DEA. Industrial hemp is not marijuana, but it has some relationships to that plant, and so there's some concerns about it apparently. We won't be growing it just yet. Also today, there's been reports from the North Little Rock police of a murder-suicide at the L'Oreal Cosmetics plant, the Galloway exit in North Little Rock. A man killed a woman and then apparently shot himself. Here's good news about Leslie Rutledge. We give her a hard time. She's joined every other attorney general in the United States and writing a letter to Congress that says we should have a law that prohibits mandatory arbitration of workplace sexual harassment complaints. They say it's easy to sweep women under the rug when you have this mandatory arbitration. Good idea. I agree with her. Surprising that Leslie Rutledge is on this. In the past, she said mandatory arbitration is a good thing when it comes to consumer finance complaints or nursing home complaints. She likes locking the hands of people in such situations so they can't go to court and can't have their day in court, but must be forced to the tender mercies of a corporate arbitrator. Good for her once on this case. And finally this, you may have been watching TV and heard that a supposed new witness has emerged on the famous Boys in the Track case. 2 young men killed, run over by a train in Saline County some 30 years ago. There's a former pro wrestler, reformed drunk and drug user who says he was there, saw what happened, knows who did it. Talks about a corrupt politician who was involved in this. We've heard a lot of these kind of rumors before. Just let me say 2 things about that. He says this corrupt politician orchestrated things at the scene with a cell phone in 1987. Well, I was around in 1987 and people weren't packing cell phones around to talk to people. They had big shoebox size things that very few people had, and even those weren't available till around 1990 as I recall. So that's one point worth looking at. Also, he's using a private investigator who we will just say had a very checkered record as a Little Rock police officer, and that also bears a look before you get too excited about this story. But who knows? Those boys were killed. The autopsy that was done by the medical examiner was badly flawed. We still don't have anybody who's been held to account for it, and understandably, at least one of the mothers who's worked hard in this case would like a final answer on her son's death. I'm Max Brantley. Resist whatever you do. I'll be back tomorrow.